Hi, everyone. My name is Michal. I'm a PhD student at Tel Aviv University. I work in Roy Bar-Khan's group. And I really wanted to say thank you for the organizers for giving me the opportunity to present my work. Even though I couldn't attend in person, I really wanted to. I apologize about that. So this is work with my advisor, Roy Bar-Khan, in collaboration with Jonathan Gula. And in this study, we want to answer if near-inertial waves enhance tracer transport out of the mixed layer. So this presentation will go as follows. First, I'm going to present some motivation and talk about previous works. Then I'm going to present the experiment and our methodology. Basically, we have two experiments, one when we force near-inertial waves and one when we don't force near-inertial waves. And we're going to compare their results. So we're going to look at mixed layer depth. We're going to look at the tracer budget analysis on constant depth and on the mixed layer base. And then we're going to show some decompositions. So tracers, why do we care about tracers? Tracers can represent different biochemicals such as oxygen, carbon, nutrients, pollutants, and their content in the upper ocean will directly affect ecosystems and can control the capacity of the ocean to uptake chemicals like carbon, which will have a direct feedback in the atmosphere. Why do we think near-inertial waves can change the tracer transport? So we know submesoscale fronts enhance vertical tracer fluxes from the upper layer down, and we know that waves can interact with that flow. So there has been recent work showing that wave-eddy interaction increase or enhance a downscale energy flux. And there have been works that show that wave-drive turbulent mixing. So all of these results kind of tell us that maybe there is wave effect on tracer export or tracer transport. So these are two previous works. These are the only works on the topic that I am aware of. I would love to hear about more if you know about them. So this first work is by Daruf Balwada. It was published in 2018. And they didn't directly wasn't focused on the wave effect on tracer export, but they did briefly talk about it. So they looked at the constant depth and looked at the vertical velocity spectrum and the co-spectrum of the vertical tracer flux. So that was a depth 400 meters below the mixed layer, well below the mixed layer. And here we see the vertical velocity spectrum. And in red, there is the dispersion relation of the Doppler shifted inertia gravity waves. And we see there is a peak in energy that is associated with the inertia gravity waves. But when we look at the co-spectrum of the tracer, of the vertical tracer flux, we don't see an analogous signal. Now, he looked at a different domain in the same simulation. Again, he saw a peak that is corresponding to the inertia gravity waves. And now he sees a weak signal that is actually showing tracer flux upward. I need to note here that he doesn't have high frequency forcing. He only has steady forcing. So I'm not sure that these are not reinforced internal waves. These are probably Lee waves. So he found that the waves in his simulation do not efficiently transfer material. This is recent work, a second work by Coleman Mahadevan. They had an idealized front. They had a process study of an idealized front, one without additional forcing and one with strong inertial forcing. And they compared the results. Again, they looked at a co-spectrum of vertical tracer fluxes at a constant depth. And here are the results for the front and for the front with inertial forcing. And you see there's quite a lot of activity that is associated with the inertial frequency. But when they sum it up, it sums to something that is closer to zero. So here in the bars, they sum all the signal in the near-inertial frequency. And in red, there's the negative value. In green, it's the positive value. And in purple, we see just a very weak signal. So again, no tracer fluxes, no net tracer fluxes associated with the near-inertial frequency. But when you look at the sub-inertial frequency, there is an enhancement in the vertical tracer fluxes. So these two approaches, they didn't find a coherent signal that is associated with a near-inertial frequency, but the second work did find that it somehow enhances tracer fluxes. And they also looked at a constant depth, whereas I'm going to look at a sloping interface that is the mixed layer depth. So how are we going to answer the question? We are going to use a realistic simulation of the Mediterranean run with Kuroko. And we choose the Mediterranean because it has energetic mesoscale field and submesoscale field. And there is a strong near-inertial waves. So the kinetic energy associated with the waves is quite strong in the Mediterranean. So that's a great place to study the interaction between different flows. And the Kuroko simulation using sigma coordinates, we use K profile parameterization for mixing, and we're going to present results for 3-kilometer resolution simulation. So still we don't resolve some mesoscale fronts here, but we have strong mesoscale eddy field. We're going to run 2 simulations, one with the original forcing and a second when we low pass the forcing using a 3-day low pass filter. And these are the spectrum of the horizontal velocity at 50 meters depth for both simulation. So in blue, we have the whole forcing simulation. In red, we have the low pass forcing simulation. And we see that we effectively reduce the energy that is associated with the near-inertial waves. So basically, we have a simulation with near-inertial wave, we have simulation without near-inertial waves, and we're going to compare the results. This is the surface Rossby field in the 2 simulation. We don't see a distinctive difference between the eddy field. And in black, we draw the contour where we analyze the data. So the analysis region is only outside or in the interior, away from the coastline. So in the black contour. And at the bottom, we have a plot of tracer concentration after 2 months. So we release tracer everywhere at the surface, everywhere at the domain in the surface, so well above the mixed layer depth. And then we run the simulation for 2 months, and we quantify what has happened to the tracers after 2 months. So here in black, we have the mixed layer depth. In kind of purple maroon, we have the concentration, and these are the 2 experiments. These are the spatial map of quantities that are associated with the tracer concentration after 2 months. So we have on the left, we have penetration depth of 99% of the tracers. In the middle, we have the amount of tracers that are under the mixed layer depth that had already penetrated the mixed layer base. And here we plot the mixed layer depth of both simulations. So the upper row is the full forcing, and the bottom row is the low pass forcing. And we see that the penetration depth of the tracer is increased by 20 meters in the full forcing simulation. But when we look at the amount of tracers that is underneath the mixed layer, it's almost the same amount. It's 18% of the tracers left the mixed layer in the full frequency, in the full forcing simulation, and 19% left the mixed layer in the low pass forcing simulation. So very similar amount. So the tracers are getting deeper, but they're not actually leaving the mixed layer. When we look at the mixed layer depth, we also see the explanation for why they are getting deeper. This is because the mixed layer depth is 20 meters deeper. So we can look at the mixed layer depth over time. This is a plot of daily average spatial mean mixed layer depth in the analysis region over a course of a full year, 2018. We release the tracers here and we analyze it after 2 months. So our analysis, our experiment is during the winter. And we see that there is it's consistent that the full forcing simulation has a lower mixed layer depth. And during the winter, it reaches to 20 meters. And that's why we see the tracers are actually reaching deeper. In summer, it's not really the same. We get, it's still lower in the full forcing experiment, but the differences are around 5 to 10 meters. Maybe in the next stage of the study, we will look at other seasons. So the tracers are getting deeper because the mixed layer is getting deeper. So now we'll do something similar to what other works have been doing, and that's looking at constant depth and see how many tracers cross that depth. So tracer transport across a specific depth, we choose 160 meters because it's lower than the average mixed layer, but above the maximum penetration depth of the tracers. So here are the results. In blue, we see the amount of tracers that have left the mixed layer in the full forcing simulation. And in red, we have the low pass forcing simulation. We see 13% of tracers left the upper 160 meters, as opposed to only 8% of the tracers in the low pass experiment. And what we also do, we decompose it to 2 other terms, to advection and mixing. And we see that the difference in tracer amount leaving the mixed layer is due to an increase in both dynamical terms, so both in advection and vertical mixing. So now we are just starting to form the question, which is, if vertical mixing and vertical advection are getting stronger, why is the amount of tracers below the mixed layer the same? Why don't we see more tracers leaving the mixed layer in the full forcing simulation? So in order to answer that question, we're going to use the tracer budget on the mixed layer base. So here, the mixed layer base is a sloping interface, and it changes over time. So now there are terms that we cannot ignore anymore, like the horizontal advection, which is represented here by the white arrows. We have vertical advection, as was already considered by in other works. We have vertical mixing and horizontal diffusion now. And there's another term that is, because the mixed layer depth or the mixed layer base is also changing over time, there is a boundary term that we need to add. So if, for example, the mixed layer is deepening, then it will swallow tracers, and this is called entrainment. And if it's getting shallower, then it leaves tracer behind, and this is called entrainment. So this is because of the boundary term in the tracer equation. There is another, the surface is also moving less, but it's still moving. The fact that we don't, it's an insignificant terms because no tracers actually leave through the surface, at least not in the simulation. So just a quick note of how we actually presenting the results. So we take each term in the tracer equation, we integrate it over the 60 days, and that tells us how many tracers left the mixed layer due to that term. So if you look at a specific cell, this tells you how many tracers left that mixed layer there, and we normalize it by the total amount of tracers. So it will actually tell you the portion of the tracers that have left the mixed layer. And when we sum everything up, it will tell you the total amount of tracers that have left the mixed layer, normalized by the total amount of tracers in the domain. So first, results of the tracer budget on the mixed layer after 60 days. Here we have the amount of tracers that have left the mixed layer, the total amount in the full forcing simulation, and here in the low pass simulation. So 15% of the tracers left in both experiments, left the mixed layer, but it doesn't change between experiments as we saw in the beginning. But if we decompose it, wait, I have an error. Yeah, if we decompose it to the different terms, we start seeing the difference between the simulation. So there is more advection in the simulation with the waves. There is more vertical mixing. There's double the amount of vertical mixing, and there is more entrainment in the full forcing simulation. The other thing to notice is that most of the tracers leave the mixed layer in specific areas. And we refer to these areas as hotspot, and we want to focus on them because this is where most of the signal is, right? So in order to focus on that, on the hotspot, we are going to consider only points when the daily tracer export or daily tracer transport is in the highest 5%. So all these points, the highest 5% will go to the hotspot, and the rest of the 95% or the weakest daily tracer transport will be classified as background. And we do see here in the results that 20% of the tracers leave the mixed layer in this hotspot. So in these hotspots, yeah, 20% of the tracers leave through these parts. But we don't see a difference between the simulations, right? There is similar amount of detrainment, similar amount of advection, but the waves or the high frequency forcing does not change our signal. What we do notice is that the difference is actually in the background points. So where it seems to have a weak daily transport rate. And these are the terms that we actually find interesting. In the full forcing simulation, there is less advection into the mix layer. There is more vertical mixing out of the mix layer, and there will be more entrainment. So we will look at these terms spatially. We will open up each term separately, and here are the results. We have advection on the left. We have the spatial map of tracer transport due to vertical mixing in the middle and due to entrainment on the right. And again, the first row is the full forcing experiment. At the bottom, we have low pass forcing experiment. And what we see is that the background is not really background anymore. It showcases a strong structure outside of the hotspot. So actually, there's a lot of activity in what we used to refer to as background. And the second thing that we noticed is that the structures kind of look the same. So what we did, we add up advection and vertical mixing, and we found it was negatively correlated, highly negatively correlated with the entrainment. So we actually calculated the correlation of advection vertical mixing versus entrainment, and we found that in the full forcing, it's the correlation coefficient is minus 0.65, and then the low pass forcing is minus 0.6, so quite negatively correlated. Remember, this is quite a complex experiment. It's quite a complex simulation. So minus 0.5, minus 0.6 is quite a lot. And you can see it definitely compared to the hotspot where the correlation coefficient is almost 0. So basically what we're seeing here, that there is a balancing effect between advection vertical mixing and entrainment. Now this is not due to the high forcing, to the high pass forcing. This is not due to the waves because we see it in both simulations, but it will tell us that if near-inertial waves enhance advection, enhance mixing, it will still be balanced by entrainment, so we won't actually see more tracers leaving the mix there, which I think is really cool. It's a really cool result, I think. The last result that I'm going to show you is the entrainment term decomposed to low frequency contribution and high frequency field contribution. So the low pass fields are defined here as the 2 days moving average. So basically a uniform filter of 2 days, trying to remove the wave effect. And this is the spatial plot of the entrainment term, of the contribution of the low pass field to the entrainment term. And you can see that in the full forcing simulation and the low pass forcing simulation, we kind of see same patterns, especially when we compare it to the high frequency contribution to the entrainment terms, when we see elevation in the entrainment, in the full forcing experiment in the entrainment. So we think the waves are probably, we can see the effect of the waves, or we can see the effect of the high forcing in this term, in this entrainment term. And the next step will be to do this analysis for advection mixing in the background term. So just let me conclude. I hope I'm good with times. So we wanted to find out if near-inertial waves enhance tracer export out of the mixed layer. We had two experiments, one with near-inertial waves, the one without near-inertial waves. And first thing that we saw is that the mixed layer is deeper in the all frequency or all forcing simulation, which makes the tracers 20 meters deeper. We also saw that there's stronger advection and stronger mixing, but the near-inertial waves do not seem to enhance tracer export from the mixed layer, which is what was our regional question. So now we are wondering why, and we found that although we see an increase in advection and mixing, it is actually balanced by entrainment. So we soon want to move to the other stage of this research, which is increasing the resolution of the simulation. So basically adding some mesoscale currents, some mesoscale fronts, and see what's going to happen. And we also want to decompose the flow to high frequency, low frequencies in other terms. And we have some other ideas about how to continue.